I know everybody wants to raise money, and maybe a source of capital you haven't thought about is philanthropic capital. And you might be thinking to yourself, wait a minute, I'm not a charity. Why would I want to talk to a philanthropist? I'm not a nonprofit, I'm a business. But if you're a social purpose business, and I would highly encourage you to balance your raise or even target your raise by using philanthropic capital, which is money that either foundations or high net worth individuals, family offices have to invest in promising startup companies with a social purpose, and that's called impact investing. And so I'm going to talk to you today some terms that you may not know, or you may know, because I really don't know how many of you have considered using philanthropic capital to help complete your raise, but that's what I'm going to be talking about. I can give you a little history about my own impact investing. And then we'll have plenty of time for either questions or from you or from Rosemary at the end. Is that enough of an introduction for now, Rosemary?
Yeah, absolutely. That's great.
Okay, great. So do you want me just to continue with kind of who I am and?
Yes, please.
How I got involved? Okay. So I'm Sheri Sobrato Brisson, and I have 25 years experience with my family of origin. My parents' family have started a family foundation over 25 years ago, which is a place-based, meaning we mostly fund in Silicon Valley, and we're mostly grantors. But the world has changed, and there's a lot of different ways that philanthropists now can participate in work with for-profit companies. And I kind of started that trend for my family. My husband and I have a separate organization for which we do grant making and also impact investing. And that's, we're co-founders of Philanthropies, which isn't our own private family foundation, but it's a series of DAFs, which I'll explain what those are, which is at our local community foundation, which is Silicon Valley Community Foundation, and also a DAF at Impact Assets, which is also local to us in the San Francisco area that does impact investing, which is using philanthropic capital to make investments in for-profit companies. So I think it's probably best if I start with terms, like what is philanthropic capital? And that's doing good by investing in for-profit companies, using money that would otherwise be granted. Okay, so this is what we call philanthropic capital, and where people keep this philanthropic capital a lot of times is either in their own private family foundations, or it's a lot of high net worth individuals, they actually keep it in what we, on the inside of us, what's called like a philanthropic bank. And that could be, your philanthropic bank could be your wealth management organization, like a UBS or Smith, or any of those types, Fidelity, places like that. So like your bank, or it could be at a community foundation, which there are community foundations all over the country. But basically that's when you have access to, well, when you have a liquidity event, or you've sold stock, or whatever it is, and you take the tax write-off in the year that the event happens. But that doesn't mean you have to give it all away in that year. So you kind of park it and then look for opportunities to give it away or invest in. So that basically is what we call a donor advised fund that can be held in other kinds of spaces. But the simplest way to explain it is it's a bunch of parked philanthropy money that's looking for a good cause, whether it's a grant making or an investment opportunity. And the other term that I think is really important that everybody understands is continuum of capital. And so people that are in the position like I am, where we're trying to deploy capital in a good way, some of which we call donated money, which is this philanthropic capital, meaning we took it right off, but we haven't given it away or invested it yet. So the continuum capital really means like you can either grant it, or you can say loan it with the expectation of getting that loan returned and recycling it to loan it again to another nonprofit. That is one type of an impact investment where it's not invested in a for-profit company, it's loaned to a nonprofit. You can do things that are called PRIs or MRIs, which are generally, but not always, terms that we use when you invest in a for-profit company. So those would be some terms that you might hear as you consider this, as you capitalize your companies. And just so you know the difference, a PRI basically is a impact first investment, meaning maybe we're willing to give up some financial return because we love the mission. And an MRI is a mission related investment. That's where philanthropists who are doing this type of investing in for-profits actually expect a return that is market driven, so a higher return. So those are just, so it's a whole continuum of capital because philanthropists have different opinions about whether they just want a grant or if they want a grant plus get that money back to reinvest it in a recycled sort of way, or an evergreen way is another term. But how this applies to you guys sitting in the room is one, is there are philanthropists out there and they can do it, give grants to for-profits, just a straight grant, they never expect to get it back. And we call that non-dilutive financing. Now, these are your best friends, right? Where you can actually get money, but not give up any equity. So for very, very early stage and promising companies where the philanthropist might want to participate in a later stage round, like an impact investment, where they will get some kind of return, some kind of stock. These are really your best friends, right? Because they'll give you the money up front with no expectation of return. So that's one type of where they can start, and then all the other ones that I described. So I think it would be helpful to make this a little more concrete by telling you a little bit about my experience as a impact investor. And so we're going to go way back in time, like about 40 years in time, when I was just getting out of college, and there was a term back then called SRI, socially responsible investing. And I had a tiny bit of investment capital from my grandfather who had passed. And I sought out companies that were not doing anything bad. So I screened a small investment portfolio that I had for companies that not necessarily were doing good, but that were not doing anything bad, clean companies. And back then there were also funds that I could invest in, which, as I got more capital, I did, like Working Out Assets or Calvert, which were funds, targeted towards companies that were not doing bad things. And then there was a whole nother way of impact investing, which was, venture funds like Uprising or Better Ventures or Capria, or I can mention a whole bunch that I invested in, but these were companies that sought out companies just like maybe some of your companies that were actually having impact and doing good, whether it was giving opportunities to people of color, whether it was women-led organizations, whether it was a theme like healthcare or the environment or other types of what we call social enterprises, that offered early stage investing or direct investing opportunities in these emerging social enterprises. So I did some of that. So that's kind of my early background. And then I sort of kind of stepped it up one step further. And I've started funds that are just directly into my areas of interest. There's an organization called Catalog Impact Fund, and we have 46 early stage companies addressing unmet medical needs, whether they're therapeutics or diagnostics companies or services. And I've also launched, and then I've also used Benefunder, which is another organization that helps philanthropists like me place their capital in both grants and and for-profit companies. And we did we looked at companies that were specifically looking at COVID solutions. So we have for-profit companies. And then on the donor side, we looked at the most innovative research being done in the area of COVID. So that's what I mean by continuum of capital, is that there's so many opportunities for us philanthropists to deploy philanthropic capital, depending on our level of risk tolerance or how we want to do it. So I would imagine you're all thinking, okay, this is the best news I've ever heard. There's all these philanthropists out there, how do we get to them? And that's slightly trickier, but I'm going to give you a little advice on how to do that. And one is through impact investing networks, where organizations are like-minded in terms of wanting to work with social enterprises and wanting to find them capital. For example, like Rosemary Truman's a Center for Advancing Innovation. I mean, that's their mission, is to help people like me and my family and other family offices and philanthropists place their capital. And so that's great that you're all here, because that is the best strategy. Another group, if you don't know them, is called One World Training. And One World Training, and they offer the same sort of services in a slightly different way, but they put companies in front of impact investors. So does Impact Assets and other kinds of impact investment demo days. Those are good organizations to just start searching on the internet and just contact them. There's other organizations, you'll love this. They're called Gin and Tonic. I'm serious. They were started by friends, and one thought it was funny to call one gin with 2 N's, and the other one is called tonic with 2 I's. And these are, philanthropist support groups, for lack of a better word. I mean, they're groups where we all get together and we share their dear flow. So the best way to kind of get into these is just make friends. I mean, what I can tell you that you can't do is call up your local community foundation and say, could you please introduce me to all your donors that are interested in my space? Because they're not going to do that.
Yeah.
So short of that, it's up to you to try and figure out, what are other ways where these people are coming together. And believe it or not, places like CAI and One World and other impact investment demo days, they are looking for companies, perhaps like yourselves, to put you in front of investors, perhaps somebody like me. So that's probably the best way, is to really do a landscape, figure out who's in your local area, and ask your friends if they are in a position like I am. Let them know about your needs for capital, and do they know any philanthropists? Even if the philanthropists aren't doing impact investing yet, you could possibly be their first impact investment. And maybe just having a meeting with people who have traditionally only given grants and talk to them about the opportunity, maybe starting a grant with your company that could turn into some type of an impact investment for them is a good place to start. So I'm going to stop there and see what questions, Rosemary, you have for me, or the audience has for me, and then we'll do a little wrap up at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. So Sheri, thank you for the overview of some of the capital architecture, which I think a lot of people don't know about. And you've done some incredible trailblazing, if you will, in that space. And we've been fortunate. So Sheri's my girlfriend too. So she and I have worked on 2 challenges together. She's been very supportive. A brain tumor challenge and the children's, the Innovate Children's Health Challenge, and very generous. And we've launched about almost 40 companies out of those 2 challenges, which are thriving. So part of what we've done in those challenges is as I mentioned before, we've advanced technologies advanced the technologies, wrapping the talent around them, and then connecting them with capital. And then in addition, we've sourced companies that are in that area, and they they thrive because they go through our accelerator program, and there's a little bit of prize money at the end. So I mean, we get thousands of people that come into the challenges, and so we get to source a lot of talent, and then we put a lot of mentors around them, and accelerator points around them. And so I would like to hear your perspective around launching companies through the challenge model.
Okay, that's easy. If I had to dream, I would like launch a giant X Prize, but I don't have that kind of money yet. But it's like able to choose. The way it was explained to me initially on was with your Avon breast cancer challenge. I mean, these are, this is a company that was very interested in not just donating, but actually launching companies for solutions around breast cancer. And I thought, no, wait a minute, I've had cancer too. Could I really do this around brain tumors, which type of cancer I have? So that's how that challenge came out. So to me, it was a huge opportunity to be able to make an impact without having to organize anything, right? Because you have the challenge, provide the challenge, you have that access to the inventions. You launch the challenge, you bring in the investors, you put together the teams, you eliminate, all the riffraff that's not going to make it. You put the mentors with the teams. I mean, it's just like a miracle, to be honest with you. So that was great. So then, my other big thing was children's health. And I'm fortunate that we had this great first children's health challenge, and now we're working on our second children's health challenge, because it's a way, I guess I've always been a secret entrepreneur at heart, and I'm not going to launch all these companies myself nor run them, but it's a way to participate in a dream of mine in a very real way. And it's obvious, like any kind of very early stage investing, not all companies are going to do well, and that's obvious, but the ones that do are going to be very, very rewarding. And the jury's out, right? Because it hasn't been long enough for any of these companies to really hit or not yet. But for me, as a smaller philanthropist, I can't participate in some of the very large stage investment capital companies. I just don't have the philanthropic resources to do that, or the funds to do that, and to be able to take what I consider a small donation and launch a challenge that then has its own to continue to go out and raise money on their own because they're taught how to do it is really wonderful. So thank you.
And one of the other things that I think that was really great through the challenges is that, oh, by the way, we're nicknamed the Tinder for Startups and Nature magazine. So I never thought I was going to be a matchmaker, but apparently I am now. So we put a lot of mentors around the groups to make them a fully fledged team. And I can talk more about that if anyone has an interest after this, because there's lots of ways we do it. But we partnered also with the NIH and with the Brain Tumor Charity Foundation. So those partnerships also came through. And of course, we're already partnered with about 150 institutions. So by way of our partnership, there's a network effect that comes into play. Sorry, I had to put my glasses back on. Okay. So I would actually invite, if we have probably room for two. Well, I would actually like you to share like one example of your investment experience. Maybe impact.
Well, I think I think one of the things I'm most excited about.
The Ignite Social Impact.
Pardon?
Maybe the Ignite Social Impact one. The first
you want me to talk about that?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Oh, okay. So one thing is, I think it's important that, I mean, I was fortunate enough to meet Rosemary, but everybody is not going to be able to meet her. And I think it's important to have a digital platform in which organizations can meet philanthropists and other impact investors. We're not always philanthropists. There's plenty of people that just take money out of their bank account and do impact investing. So they feel good about the investments that they're making. They have a kind of double bottom line, so to speak. And these type of investors, some of them are accredited investors, which have tons of money and are used to talking to people about term sheets and all of that. And some of them are people that have less capital to invest. But if you source in a crowdsourcing sort of way, a bunch of individuals that are like-minded and like-hearted to be able to participate in companies that they care about, which is really what the Ignite platform does. It's a huge opportunity, I think, to, as Rosemary says, democratize impact investing. So it's just not the family offices and high net worth individuals that are doing it, but everybody can participate. So when Rosemary came with me with this idea, I said, okay, that's a perfect impact investment for me.
And so anyone can invest $100 to, that the company can invest, the companies can raise up to $5 million on the platform. But they have to be impact oriented. We have a strong due diligence model around that. We have, I think we have time for one question or two. So if anyone has a question or two for Sheri.
Sheri, thank you for all you're doing. Just curious, since I work with so many family office investors, what numbers are you talking about? Is it like 50,000 for these challenges? And because I do work with a lot of startups that they win these competitions and challenges, and that money is very helpful, non-dilutive, all the things that you mentioned. But does it vary with the challenge that you do? I mean, the brain tumor challenge you did mention sounds amazing, and we'd love to hear more.
So let's just clarify the question, because there's an investment in the challenge,
Okay.
and then that's different. That's operating the challenge, and then there's the actual investment in the companies.
Okay.
So you're asking about the investment in the companies?
Yeah, I mean, the dollars matter, whether it's 25 or 25K or more. I'm just kind of curious how I can share this information with the investment community and let them know what you're doing.
Well,
I can share
I can briefly, this is really more of a question for Rosemary, but, obviously with the training, all the acceleration of the companies and everything else, say a challenge is operationally run for between what, Rosemary, like 1.2 and 1.5 million, and that's to go over to hundreds of inventions, to then pare it down, to then build the companies and all of that. So for me personally, what I did is gave a donation, not for the we put together, like she said, the National Institute of Health or the Brain Tumor Society, or we're doing a second Children's Health Challenge, and we're putting together, different either companies or foundations that are interested in this, bettering children's health generally. And so in other words, it doesn't have to be one philanthropist, it could be a combination. And then, for me personally, I did not take any positions in the companies that were launched. I did it as a philanthropist. However, there could be a model where people want to have a percent of the companies that come out, and that's really more a Rosemary question.
So children's
for me, it's just a straight donation. It was the concept that I liked. And then, of course, as these companies mature, well, there'll be opportunities to do impact investing in the individual companies that emerge. That's between me and the companies and everything else as the best